It's 5 p.m. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's settled. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar, Voter Newbie, the How-Tos for First-Time Registrants. It's presented by the 2020 Project and co-sponsored by ASAM News. Also, shout out to Act to Change, who've been helping us shout out the webinar. My name, if you don't know me, I'm Jess Vu. I'm part of the outreach team for the 2020 Project. If you're new to us, we're a collaboration between UNASA and YAMYAMF, and our goal is basically to get 100,000 Asian American Pacific Islanders registered to vote by the 2020 elections. We do this through raising awareness, providing education, and giving a space for civic engagement on a local, regional, and national level. You can follow us on social media right here, as you can see, at Vote 2020 Project, or you can check out our website for more info at vote-2020-project.org. And I encourage you all to head to our website after the webinar to pledge and register to vote. So we'll get things started and start introducing our amazing participants, who I'm also fortunate to call my friends. So we'll start with LACY Liu-Win-Wright. LACY is a social impact consultant who uses pop culture to foster social change. Currently, she serves as the project manager of Build Power, an initiative founded by Kendrick Sampson to connect cultural influencers with grassroots organizers. But she's also worked in places like the CAA Foundation and was also an editor-at-large for the Huffington Post. And then finally, we have Ian Alexander. He is an actor who's best known for his role as Buck Vu in the Netflix series The OA. And he will also be appearing in the sequel to a popular video game, and one I'm personally anticipating myself, The Last of Us Part 2. Outside of acting, he's a passionate advocate for transgender and racial justice, and hopes to see more representation of transgender youth in media. So I'm going to disappear now and let these two get started. So LACY, you can take it away.
Bye, Jess. But you also realize once Ian's in The Last of Us 2 and it comes out, he's going to be too popular to be our friend.
I know. No, it's not true. Don't say that. It's not true. Bye, Jess.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get this started. So I, just to let the audience know, I'm 23, I'm going to turn 24 next month, Gemini baby. And Ian, you're freshly 19, if I remember.
Yes, so yeah, my birthday's April 20th, so just turned 19.
So this will be your first time voting in a presidential. My first time voting in a presidential was Hillary versus Trump, so it was not a happy day, but hopefully making something a bit happier this time around. But I just want to chat with you a little bit first about, like, you know, why you're here, because, you know, what was it that first got you motivated and interested in being civically engaged? And that's like the fancy way of saying, like, why do you give a shit? Because I feel like so many young people, like, we don't necessarily have to. There's so much going on in our lives. COVID is happening right now. You're young. There's school. There's everything in the world like that you have to navigate. Like, what first got you involved to care so much about political stuff?
That is a great question. I think it's honestly social media that got me really engaged in, like, politics at a young age, because I was active on Twitter and Tumblr, and, like, I saw a lot of, like, awareness for like anti-Black systemic racism, and like the Black Lives Matter movement was probably just like the first, like, social justice movement that I really followed. And that just kind of led into this whole, like, online community of, you know, activism for LGBT rights and, like, you know, transgender healthcare access, and specifically, like, the bathroom bill in, like, North Carolina, so HB2, like, that was a huge thing that I was pushing for when I was in high school, because that, like, really hit home for me, like, as a trans student. But it kind of just evolved from there, and, like, I've just been trying to educate myself as much as possible on my own terms, and, like, taking a bit of a step back from social media as, like, my sole source of political info. So yeah, I guess that was how I got passionate about it.
Well, that's super cool, and I feel like that's something that's also so special about, like, our generation, is that, like, we have access to so many more conversations and discussions because of social media. Like, you can hear so many more voices that helps get us involved. And I think sometimes I don't think people really know that about you, that you actually got pretty well known even before you were cast in VOA, because you were so vocal about so many issues, again, from, like, a really young age. But I think also one of the bad things about, not necessarily about the generation, but one of the things that a lot of people focus on is we don't focus on voting. There's so many ways to get involved, and that's social media activism and awareness. That could be direct advocacy, like all these great ways to like get involved in your community. But you know, voter turnout's not that high for folks under the age of 30. So what was it that got you actually to care about like voting particularly?
I guess, yeah, I really do agree with what you said about like, I think Gen Z, like we really prioritize awareness and like direct outreach through social media, but like the voting tends to fall a little off because it's like, we're not sure what even is voting. Does it matter? Does it not? It doesn't seem like it does, but what made me really interested in voting was just the fact that I didn't want to feel like helpless or complicit in the system. I wanted to be like as educated as possible about like what's going on in the government. And I don't want to just be like, well, guess they're voting on some sort of bills, might be taking away my rights, might not, like, who knows? Like that didn't really, it was
There's a moment when it like impacts you directly, you're like, oh, so the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm supposed to be voting on, like that's gonna come back and affect me somehow.
Yeah, it does. It sets us up for our future. And I guess I had this feeling of like, I want to be doing as much as I possibly can. So like, you know, if that's social media and voting as well as like direct community action, then like I should be doing all of those things. So yeah, that's why voting just became like more important to me than it was in the past. Also, because like I legally can vote. So it makes sense why it wasn't really a priority before.
I know, how was that feel the first time you can actually finally register to vote, you can prep for it? But yeah, that's really cool. And so like that kind of goes into it. It's like, I think sometimes when people think about politics, they think about like Democrats versus Republicans and the campaign trail and like what's on the news. But at the end of the day, like politics affects your life. Like it affects everything in your life. What happens in your schools, what happens in your healthcare, like all sorts of things. And so, you know, what were those issues that you really care about? Like what are you voting for? Because I think also that's one thing I hate is like people think politics is politicians going like, vote for me, vote for this person. And actually it's like, no, they should be voting for me. They should be voting for my issues and what I care about. So what are those things that you want to see change on?
I guess it's so hard to kind of just like define it into a few things because I am passionate about so much. I mean, we've talked about like kind of like both of our stances on things and just like how there can be sort of an overwhelming amount of things that we want to change all at once. So I guess if I had to like really focus my attention in like specific areas, it would be like trans discrimination within healthcare. And I know that like the Department of Health and Human Services is I made a note of it because I didn't want to forget like the specific section of the Affordable Care Act, but it's section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. Basically right now it has like explicit protections for LGBT people because it prevents discrimination based on sex stereotyping and gender identity, but they're trying to change that to like remove that explicit protection. And so I'm like, that's something I definitely want to feel like I have an impact on if I'm, you know, if my vote can change that decision or sway that decision in any way. I don't know if it can. I don't know. I could, that would be a question I'd have to ask you of like, is that something that I could do?
Well, no, that's the thing is like, that's also, you just brought this up. It can be so overwhelming sometimes because there's so much to know that you do and you don't know. And like, obviously, like I care about being a trans ally. At the same time, I don't know what the Department of Health and Human Services is doing right now around trans access to healthcare. Like it's so overwhelming. And I think that's one of the big things is, you know, you're not only just voting on the direct issues you care about, you're also voting people who are going to represent you. So, you know, that is something like whoever gets appointed to be secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, like that's the presidential thing at that point. Like that's something that's federal. So there's also, that's why you have to be involved at all different levels because it does affect you. But that's super cool that that's something you like know so much about because it's something that I don't.
Yeah, I think that is like kind of the beauty of sharing resources, like you said earlier, of just like, you know, being able to kind of have this like collective knowledge that we bring together of different areas of expertise in our lives. And so I'm glad I'm able to provide you with that perspective of, you know, something that you didn't know about. And I would love to ask you more about something I know you have experience with of just like how to stop feeling helpless to like the injustice within our justice system, because that's another thing that I really want to vote about and like have my vote impact is just like how incarcerated folks just receive subhuman treatment, like especially during COVID time of like, you can't socially distance if you're in a prison, and like they're not receiving proper medical attention and like, or even like face coverings or anything like that. So it's just, yeah, that's something that I definitely wanted to ask you about, since I know that you do have experience working in like just specifically like
Yeah.
racial justice.
I know, and then I guess it's the same sort of thing as like, it takes a while to figure out like who affects what thing. And I actually used to teach in the prison system when I lived in Philadelphia. So I actually taught at like 2 juvenile detention centers and then a county correctional facility. And so again, there are some things that, if it's a federal level offense, you go to a federal prison. Whereas if it's, a county level offense, you'll go to a county jail. Like there's so many levels. So the two things that I've been focusing on, at least in California, and these were, again, you can do things through direct advocacy or you can do things through voting, is we lobbied the governor to release folks who were in prison who are older, who are like higher risk for COVID, and folks who sentences were going to be running out soon anyway. Let's release them early. Like, let's have decarceration. Like, folks don't need to be in prison most of the time. Folks shouldn't be in prison in general, but we should fight for that. But then there was also a great thing, Patrice Cullors. She is the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, and she runs Reform LA Jails, and she put a measure on the ballot last March that specifically said, like, let's decrease the prison population. This was pre-COVID, it's like, we just don't need this many people in prison. And also, it's been shown, don't quote me on these stats, but about 40% of folks in prisons have some sort of mental illness, and an even smaller percentage has a severe mental illness. And so, we need to be focusing not on putting people in prisons, we need care and not cages. And so that was something that we focused on at the county level, because the largest mental health facility in LA County is the jails. It's the prison system. So, that was something that she organized on a county level, because these are prisons and jails, incarceration systems that are run by the county. So, those are the different levels that you can go to. And so there's a way to make an impact at every single stop. And I think that's something that I've talked with so many people about, is like, everyone's very focused on the presidential. And the presidential is important. That's the appointing of judges, secretaries, ambassadors, all of these things. And so is Congress, but there's all the things you care about can probably be affected as well on the local level. Yeah. But, is there anything else that like you were super passionate about that really brought you to these issues, or any other questions? Like, how nervous do you feel about voting? You'll be voting for the first time in November, yeah?
I mean, yeah, so it'll be my first general election, and I'm nervous that I'm gonna make the wrong decision. I'm nervous and then be like, why did I waste my vote? Why did I waste my time and energy? And like, I guess it's just sort of that like fear of like messing up that prevents me from doing something in the first place, which is just, it is a kind of silly mentality of like, oh, I'm just going to avoid this thing and then hope that it changes just magically on its own. But that's kind of what I've been doing up until now.
That's 100% like my depression approach to it. It's just like, if I just pretend it's not there, we won't deal with it, right? It doesn't happen. But that's true. But that's kind of the terrible thing about voting, is like, you cannot do it. You can absolutely not do it. And I think that sucks, because you should. I mean, I get that feeling, because I also was like super worried, but I also wonder, and this is not true of all Asian Americans' experiences, but like, I grew up in like Southern Orange County, and like, it was a very like academic heavy, like test prep, college prep sort of style place. So I remember the first time I looked at a ballot, it kind of looks like a multiple choice test. I don't know if you felt like you feel that looking at the sample ballots, but like, that's what it felt like. It's a test that to study for, you've got to learn everything, and you've got to get it done, and you can't mess it up. Like, that was your fear, right? That you're going to mess it up, as if it's a test that you're going to be graded on. It's not. It's really not. But I think that also goes back to something, is like, we talk about how great it is that we have access to all this information. And you learn so much through social media. Like, you got involved before you could even vote. Like, no one was asking you to get involved at that time. Like, you brought yourself to those things. But I think it sucks. That also means like, we know how much we don't know. Like, you're so painfully aware. There's no way you could fully study your ballot. You would die under all the information, right? Like, there's, cross-information and fake news and all these sorts of things. But also, it's actually been shown that like, I think half of all folks under the age of 30 don't think they know enough to vote. Like young people just feel like we don't know, and I think it's because we know how much we're unaware of. I don't know if that's a sense that you get. It's definitely something that I felt.
Oh yeah, I definitely have that feeling of just like I don't know all the answers, so that means that I just should not do any of it.
But that's also the thing, is that you think of it like it's an answer, that it's like something, like it's a question that there's a yes or no answer to, and like that's not it at all. And, millennials actually outnumber baby boomers at this point, but like, we're Gen Z, we're not even millennials at this point, but like baby boomers vote at such a higher rate. I think like 70% of them voted in the last presidential election compared to like 40% of millennials, I think are my numbers. But, I don't think that it's actually been shown that we know more. We are more aware because we're constantly in these conversations. We're constantly talking to people. And I think it's been shown that like we also can tell the difference between fake news and not news. Like we know more than Karen. I'm just saying, like, so you should feel empowered to know that even if you're not completely sure, you probably have not studied every single possible thing you could have studied. You still know more than enough to vote. And again, it's not a test. So if there's a question that like maybe you don't know who to vote for, like you're okay to skip it. You don't get deducted points. Like you're not gonna come out of the polling place and be like C+, you voted for all of the wrong people. If there's like a right or a wrong.
That's so true. That does take a lot of the pressure off. It actually makes me feel so much better. You're right. Like there's no judgment in the process, and it is all like, at the end of the day, just something that I can choose to be as involved in or as little as involved in as I want to be. So I could spend the time to do like hours and hours of research, or I could just, find like I don't know, are there any like guides or like voting guides or something, or like sites I could go to just kind of break it down? Like here's like who to vote for if you agree with these things, or.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places. And I think that's, again, the issue. There are so many places you could go to. The two places I've kind of gone to the most are Ballot Ready, and that's like both is like a nonpartisan neutral site, and you just type in your address and it shows you everything on your ballot. It shows you everyone you're going to be voting for, and statements from each person, so you can read through your ballot and kind of see like, this is what I'm going to be voting on. And I think also, especially now that we're in COVID world, we should all be registering if you can to vote by mail. And if your state is not allowing you to, this is the time we lobby to vote by mail, because no one should be going in person to vote anymore. No one should be doing anything in person. But that's also what's great about vote by mail, is you're doing it at home. So you can do it, again, it's not a test. And if it was, it's open book. Like you can absolutely like do the research at home. So I go to Ballot Ready, and the League of Women Voters is also great. Like find your local chapter, and they're also nonpartisan, and they walk you through everything. But again, that's also kind of why I was asking you earlier, like what are the issues that you care about? Because that's the time when you should look for, if it's reproductive justice, Planned Parenthood sends out guides for every, chapter of who's on the ballot, who to vote for, so they can recommend it. If it's LGBTQ issues, I'm sure GLAAD or any of the other major like LGBTQ orgs come out with that. And I think that's also a chance where like you might not realize, we care so about what our Congress members and our president thinks. All of these issues also whittle down. So, one of the things I was thinking about a lot is climate change. And we think about climate change as this huge, big issue. It's the Paris Accords, it's the Green New Deal. Like this is something like big people in big positions deal with. You can also look for the environmental platform of your school board members. Like, are your school buses chugging out like hefty amounts, of CO2, or are they, or are we doing like clean air fleets? Are we teaching about climate change in our school districts? When they're building a new school, is it eco-friendly? Can we put some solar panels on these new school roofs? These are things that, again, you can affect at every single level. That's why some people might not know what they do, but like, you should care about your water district board and all of the neighborhood council, because I think actually where you can make the most amount of impact is at the local level, because you know your neighborhood best. There is something like, to deal with something at the presidential level is so big, and there's so many things in this federal policy and all of these politics, but you know your neighborhood. And I think, that's what's really cool sometimes, what you can look for. I think also, again, if we think about it too much like a test, you don't need to, it's not like all the information is out there, you need to study it and then come back and then take the test. Like you can be part of the situation. So I think that's also things like you can ask your candidate stuff. Like they're begging for people to get involved with the campaign or meet with them or chat with them. That's what we spend all of the money on, is reaching people, hoping you'll respond. I've worked so many campaigns, and that's what it's about. And you can participate. You can email them and say like, hey, you're running for city council. Like, I don't see anything on your website about this issue. What's your stance on it? I've met with candidates, and they also want input from you because they want to know what people care about. So I've met, went to a random meet and greet with a few candidates. I walked up to them. I was like, I'm very, very passionate about, education policy and like these and these reforms. What's your stance on this? And he's like, I don't have a policy yet. So tell me your thoughts. I'd like to know. So you actually can have an impact then maybe on what they'll do. It's not like information's out there and you just decide between a few options. You can have a chance to actually make an impact to those things. Because maybe it's something they haven't considered. There's no candidate on this earth that could possibly write up all the policies for all the things. It's impossible. So you can have an input in that.
I love that so much. Oh my God, that's so impactful.
That was a rant. That was definitely a ramble. I just got on the soapbox.
But that snaps to you because that whole thing was like so empowering, and like I feel like I really can make a difference, because I guess I was looking at it as this very like black and white, like I have to choose between two options and then like that decides like the fate of the next, however long political term. But you're right that it can be an ongoing process of like being civically engaged and like, contributing to candidates' policymaking, which I think I didn't even realize that was an option. But you're so right that like politicians they want to know like what the people want, because they want to, they want the people to be happy. Like that's kind of like their whole.
They're supposed to serve us. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, at least that's what they're supposed to do. But generally, for the most part, like any politician that I would want to be supporting, at least, would be very, very understanding and just willing to listen and empathetic. So yeah, I really, really liked that that like rant that you went on.
But that's like a way to figure it out. Like how, if you tweet them or if you reach out to them or you email them, do they respond? And that can now inform your decision. Like that's something more now. Like, oh, this guy was rude to me about it, or this woman was great and reached back out to me. That can affect everything. And also, if you would talk about like you got involved because of social media to some degree. Like if you're vocal on these issues, that also tells the journalists who are covering the political beats, like, oh, these are the things that people are caring about. These are the things that people are tweeting and want to know about that. We should ask them that in the debate. We should ask them that in our next interview. Like you get to control this process too. You're not just like a participant, or like a passive participant in it. Like you can be active in this process all the way through. Being involved in voting is more than just what happens at the ballot.
Absolutely. It's a whole process of like before of education, of doing the actual voting, and then like the follow-up of like seeing how it impacts the community. I love what you said about like just recognizing that there are so many different aspects of like what go into a certain issue, like with climate change, like the different layers of like the school district, the water and board district. I don't even know what the water and water district does.
I don't know, and I don't have to. And that's the thing. That is also the thing is like, again, it's not possible for you to know all of the answers. And I think that's why, like, again, it's not a test in the sense of like, I have to study it all on my own. It's an open book test that we can all cheat off each other for. So there are some things that I don't understand. I don't understand water policy. I have friends who studied environmental science though. And so I just text them. I'm like, what is this? And what do I have to care about during this vote? Like I just said earlier, I don't know everything going on about trans healthcare. And if I tried to learn everything in the world going on, I would also be crushed under all the weight. And that's the thing is you are the person that people are gonna go to for the issues. Like you can be an issue expert for them. I'm great on local issues. I know nothing about what's going on in Congress right now. And that's fine. You can come together and build those things. And I think that's what's a lot of fun is like, I've always tried to do ballot parties. So we all get together and we fill out our ballots together. But that's how you can like live ask questions and be like, does anyone know what the water board does? Does anyone know why we care about this? Anybody? And you can bring that information together because again, you're voting for your community. What happens, who you're voting for affects everyone in your area. It affects, you, not just you personally, but everyone else. So like, why not vote as a community? Why not bring everyone together to figure things out together? I text you all the time. You're like, I don't know what's going on with this. Can you tell me the answer? And you do the same for me. So like, we should vote in pods.
I love that. I love the voting or the ballot party idea. Like that just makes it so that takes the pressure off of it being this like sole, like lonely decision thing that you have to do all on your own and figure out all on your own. Because you're right that like this is ultimately we want to be voting for our community. So like to do it with our communities is like ideal for sure.
I don't know, have you struggled to like convince friends to vote, or did it take someone to like reach out to you to convince you to vote? Like, what do you feel like has provoked your age for like the first time voting, what determines whether someone's gonna do it or not?
I mean, I guess I kind of like I just let my own decision influence like my decision to register to vote, but like it definitely did help with like the encouragement of just seeing other people doing it and posting about it. Honestly, that was like my biggest incentive of just like seeing people posting like the I voted sticker and me being like, oh, I should probably do that. And it kind of just reached a point where I was like, oh yeah, I can't really, it feels kind of a little bit hypocritical to just like constantly post about things that I want to change without actually taking any steps to change the policies. And I realized that I do have that power to be able to make a difference. Even though I am one person, I have a network of people. There are people that are, for some reason, willing to listen to what I have to say. So I might as well take advantage of that and try to guide people in a direction of making the world a better place. And that's honestly all I really care about at the root of all the, the things that I'm passionate about in terms of like prison justice and reform and like, trans discrimination in healthcare and like houseless folks and like LGBT youth that are being, like they don't have lack of access to accessible housing. All those things just kind of tie into the core root of like wanting people to have access to housing and healthcare and food and like all the basic things that people should have in
Things
society.
that you should have in this world, but for some reason we don't offer.
And that's something I want to change. And that's something I really want to be able to like call up people and talk to them about it, and people in my own life, and then also like hopefully sway some politicians' minds of people that can actually, implement those laws that start, making things more accessible. So
And I think it is more accessible than people think. I mean, this is a little bit like after you vote, but again, no politician knows the answer to everything. No one knows everything that's going on. No one knows all of the problems. Like there are these major issues like healthcare, like houses, but also, I had a friend a really long time ago who was a community college student. I didn't know at the time was houseless, and he wasn't allowed to use the showers in the community college campus because it was only for students in the gyms. And that was just like, we're taking gym classes. Like that was a stupid policy that made no sense to him. So he just wrote a bill with his local assembly member and was like, can we change this? That just lets houseless students use the showers at community college gyms. It does not cost us that much. And I don't understand we deny that dignity. And we went and just met with different assembly members until we got it passed. And again, that's not an issue anyone is against. No one is really anti letting folks who need showers use the showers, but like no one knew this was an issue. No one thought this was an issue. Because of course gym access is only for folks who are using the gym. And like you have the ability to now go to people and like say, this is what I want, this is what I want to see, and you get to be involved in that process. And again, that's a very local issue that's very small and very specific to community college students in California. But he's able to make a difference in that because your local issues better. And that also shows like which assembly members didn't support this, who didn't really care. Like now you remember, now you know who we need to replace, who you want to vote out. This is how you slowly start to inform yourself. And I think that's also kind of going back to like what you talk about is like, no, people do follow you for a reason, Ian. I hate when you say like, I don't know why they're following me. Like you have so much to say. And I think people know that, and that's why they love you, and that's why they follow you, and that's why people are drawn to you. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's particular issues sometimes that really activate people. Like the world is burning down. I don't know if anyone's noticed, like, and especially for like you and me, like how did I grow? 2001, then we had the wars, then we had the 2008 recession, now we have COVID. Like there are constantly issues in this world. So if you don't care at this point, I don't know what it's gonna take. But people do get politicized around other people. So when you go out and say like, look, this is something that's affected my life, this is something that I care about, and I want you to vote for me, this is who I'm supporting and this is why. Like I think that's so valid. And even not for influencers, like what you can do on a personal level just to your friends, that matters. You don't need a platform necessarily to make a difference in people's votes. People will vote for people they love. So be the person that they love. That was also another rant.
that's all so true and so valid. And I like what you said about like the fact that it's not just limited to influencers with a large platform, because at the end of the day, like like, even though I am really privileged and grateful to have that platform, I do want to impact, you know, the people that I care about most, and, you know, the people that I call my friends and family. So like the fact that you were able to help your friend, you know, be able to take showers, and like, you know, that's something that you directly saw a change in that action. And so that's something I want to do, is just like see a direct result of my action, rather than feeling like I'm just incessantly shouting into the void and like nothing's actually happening or improving, and I'm just watching, like you said, the world continue to burn. Um, Social media activism can kind of feel like that way sometimes, of just like you're not really getting anything in return. At least that was my experience of just of like post-Trump election, just because I couldn't vote, and because I was a teenager and didn't have a car and didn't really have access to, like, you know, go to like direct action things like volunteer efforts and like canvassing and stuff like that. I did feel pretty helpless for a little while, but now I realize that like I have the power to do those things. I can go out and talk to people and make change happen. So
Right, and actually I think there's actually a lot of cool things going on right now, because we are in the COVID world and everything's going on. But that also means like we can all do it from home as long as you have access to internet. So there's so many apps now, like call your neighbors to see if they fill out the census, call your neighbors to see if they registered to vote, like all of these things that you can do to get involved. But I think what you're feeling though is valid, is that like there's like an empathy fatigue. Like everything is important and you want to care. You genuinely want to care, but there's also so much to care about as the world burns down. Like there's everything that you need to change. And I think Hassan Minaj did a great TV bit about this, about like, it's so hard to care about everything. And just because you're maybe blocking yourself off and giving yourself mental space from something doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you don't care. You can say like, I don't want to watch CNN today and I don't want to read this latest update. But that's also where you need to build trust with your community and be like, I'm gonna reach out to someone who knows this better. I don't have the emotional energy to sit here and read about all the terrible things we need to change, but I am going to ask someone, you know, this is what I care about. How do you think I should vote on this? Yeah.
true. I definitely think that it's important that we don't allow ourselves to get to that fatigued burnout point, because then it's like then nothing happens, you know, then no change happens. So I think, like you said, just like reaching out to a friend that might be more knowledgeable, like you're that friend for me, of being like, what can I do? What can I do?
But that's the point, is like we should be building out these friendships. And I think we should be building out like, again, like who do you know that maybe is interested in these things, but just like doesn't have the time? Because I have so many friends that don't have the time. Like when was I supposed to be researching all of these things for the ballot? When I have a job and I have school and I had homework and all of these things. Like it's okay to admit what you don't know. And again, it shouldn't feel like a test. Like I'm not going to judge you because you came to me and said like, I really care about these issues and yet still have no idea what I'm voting for on these issues. Like that's okay. I think it's like accepting that, you know, that you don't know things is okay.
I'd rather like acknowledge the fact that I don't know things than like pretend that I know things and then like mansplain and be like, I know everything about this topic. 'Cause the truth is, like, it's always going to be a learning experience. I'm always going to be changing my mind and opinion constantly, and developing it as things change. So that's why I want it to be an ongoing conversation, but rather than like, it's not like a rule book. Like there's no rules that you're reading out to me. It's kind of just like your opinion, and it's a collaborative effort.
Right, and you can change and adapt. And also, like, you're so young, and it's great that you have a platform, and that you have people that are listening to you. But I think it's also great that you're out here saying, like, no, I don't know everything, and that's okay. Like, you're all, like, you can learn just as much from people as you're sharing with them. Yeah. Well, I think we have some Q&A questions if we want to try and, like, delve into them. All right. I'm going to go for one. Let's see. Recent polls show that younger voters aren't engaged or excited about the election and the candidates. I wanted to see what LACY and Ian thought about that, and if they agree, why they think it's so, and what can be done to get younger voters excited. Okay, there's a lot in there. Thank you, Phil. But, okay, you're younger than me, so I'm gonna let you take the first half, but do you feel like younger voters aren't as engaged or excited about this election? And then we can go into like, maybe we can do change that. What do you feel?
Yeah, I definitely have noticed just amongst like my friends and peers on social media that a lot of people are just feeling really stuck between like two people that they don't want to vote for. which I'm noticing is kind of just a common theme in like pretty much every election, at least like a presidential election, that is. But a lot of people are kind of just giving up completely because they're just like, well, the government is so fucked at this point. Like they've just kind of completely burnt out and like shut out of like the fact that they could possibly make a change. And so that does really make me sad that like people have just kind of completely lost all hope to the point of like not even trying. But that's at least what it's been in my perspective of people just being like, I'm not even going to vote, which makes me sad because it's like, you know, might as well try to not get Trump reelected. Might as well make like some attempt.
Right. But that's all the thing is like, I completely get that. I know people felt that in 2016, like you don't love either candidate. And that's also what sucks sometimes about these elections is like, I'm not saying everything that I want out into the world. I have to choose between two people and hope one of them can represent me. They may or may not, you know, so beyond Trump though, like is what does that get to say like you're still gonna vote? Like why do you think like you're still gonna get to the polls? Because I know you're not completely enthused by either candidate. We're definitely not enthused with one of them.
I think the thing that's still gonna get me to go to the poll just is like, honestly, just out of obligation of like, if I don't do it, I know that I will have basically put a vote towards Trump, and it just doesn't really sit well with me that like I would do that. And I just want to stop feeling like helpless. I want to stop feeling complacent in the whole situation. So that's why also like local action and like community action is really important to me, because like I will kind of ultimately feel helpless in something as large as like a federal election, because it's just so massive and it's so high up there that it doesn't really directly affect me, at least immediately. Like it will, but it doesn't affect me directly. But I think they're all important. I do want to prioritize like all of them kind of equally.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. And I think I'm kind of going to like the next part then is like, how do we get younger voters more excited? Like, at least this is my opinion, like young people are excited and passionate about these issues. We're just not excited about voting because we're voting between people we don't like. But I think that's also, maybe for me, it's like, I want to see the issues that I care about represented on this ballot. Like I want to see candidates that talk about what I care about, and when they don't, then I feel disengaged. Like then I don't care. But that's also kind of goes back to what we said earlier, is like, you have a right to demand what people talk about. I think 2016, they brought up like, there was only 1 or 2 questions about climate change. The entire, like all of the debates, every single debate, like of all of them, there was only like 1 or 2 questions total. And people made a really big stink about that. Like, this is the existential crisis of our lifetimes. Like, what are you not talking about? So, you know, that got brought up later. And that's why I think this time around for the Democratic primary, there was like a CNN climate change town hall specifically, because this is what people demanded they want to talk about. And so I think reminding young people that they do have that power, because I think that's also sometimes why I hate like get out the vote things across the board, is like, we need to make voting cool for young people. If we throw this celebrity at it and they turn their hat backwards and look cool like a young person, that makes voting fun. Like that's what's gonna get us engaged. Like young people do care. I think that's what people forget. It's like, it's not like, oh, we're all sitting at home playing video games, we don't care about anything. Like young people are so passionate. I just feel like they have nowhere to put that passion. So it's making people feel like they have a voice in this process. And that's, again, like not just voting, like how can young people have a say on the platform? Like, what are the things young people care about? Student debt, you know, that kind of affects all the young people. What are, you know, and that's the chance where like you should go out there and say like, this is what I care about and I demand to be heard on these issues. At least for me, but I've always been very loud and proud about demanding what I want from the world. I try and go into this world with the empowerment of a mediocre white man, and it's gotten me very far.
I love that. Honestly, like you deserve to have that power.
Right? Like so many folks, this like goes to like boomers, like they don't doubt what they know. They think they know it all and they go vote for it. They don't. It's shown we know more, but we just don't go into it with that confidence. So I think it's all about that, is reminding young folks that like they should be confident in what they have to say. And I think sometimes like get out the vote things are like very condescending. It's like, we make it cool, don't forget, it's important. It's like, I don't want you to tell me how to vote. I hate when parties come to you and be like, oh, you should vote for us and you should join our cause. It should be like, we want you involved in our project because you are the future. And that's a big reminder. It's like, you get to shape what your political party looks like, what your candidates look like, what your city looks like. So go be involved in it. Because at the end of the day, you have to live through it. We've got how many, if we make it through climate change, God forbid, but like we got how many more years to go?
Let's not think about that.
we're
Think about
hoping,
what we can do right now.
but okay, but that's also it, and that's also I think where entertainment is so important too, and like the work that you do is like, you know, how many movies have come out about climate change, like the world's gonna end, or like how many zombie apocalypse films have we seen? I don't know, where it's like everything feels like it's the end. It's like we also should determine like what we want to imagine. I think that for me was the power of like the Green New Deal. Is like not every policy point in there was gonna be good. And like let's be real, we all talk about the Green New Deal. How many of us know what's actually inside the bill? How many of us know what's written inside and what the policy points are? But instead, what it was really about was like it was a vision for this world. Like if we can make the utopia we want and we can make climate change end, like what, you know, what does the world look like after that? And let's ideate how we get there. You know, I think that's important. So I think it's to think about those things too, is like what do you want this world to look like in 20 years? If you just got to wave a magic wand and sculpt it, what would you get?
I absolutely love that, because like the power of like positive manifestation is just so strong, of like saying like this is what we want to move towards, like this is the future that we want, rather than being like caught in the past of like this is what we don't want, this is what we want to move away from. Like I really love that positive mindset you have of like what is the future that we want to bring, and how can we bring that into fruition, of like what are the steps that need to be taken. And I guess like I really do agree with what you're saying of like people don't really need to try to make voting fun, because voting isn't really going to be fun for anyone. What is like the rewarding, like fun part is seeing the actual positive change that happens. And like you said, people do care about things. It's just a matter of where we put that energy and how we utilize our time and energy to vote for things that we are passionate about, and then to go out into the community and make those things happen. So yeah, I definitely think that I'm just feeling inspired to do something right now. Like I want to go to sorry, what was the website you said? It was Decide Your Ballot.
Ballotready.org is
Ballot Ready. Ballot Ready. Okay.
Type in
Ballot
your
Ready.
address. It tells you when your next election is, if your ballots come out, like what's going to be on the ballot. And then top off, it also shows like who's currently representing you. So unfortunately, the first button is Donald Trump, but we're going to ignore that button. But you know, again, like, you may not even, like you didn't know what the water board was. Like you may not even know who's representing you at this point. And that's sometimes also what sucks is like, because no one cares about some of these smaller positions, no one cares who gets elected into them. And so you can get really problematic people in these positions. And I think it's really important sometimes to care about, I think people watch Parks and Rec and think it's really funny because it's about like literally the lady on Parks and Rec board. Like it's such these tiny positions where people think they have so much power, but they do, because those are the people who are gonna run for city council later. Those people are gonna run for Congress later. Like before everything, Julian Castro was like the youngest city council member in San Antonio history. Biden was also, I think it was like Newtown City Hall. Like Bernie was also like Burlingame's, mayor. Like they all start somewhere. So you're not just voting for the president on today's ballot. You're also voting for who's going to be on that ballot in 20, 30 years. But then, I think that goes into our next question is, what would you recommend as resources to learn more about local politics for newbie and young voters? Do you want to recommend a few before I go into another rant?
I mean, for resources, I'm not sure if I really do have that many resources, because that was a question that I had to ask you. So I think that would be a wonderful question for you to answer.
Well, okay, I'm gonna turn it back to you. Have a second. What do you normally turn to when you have a question about something? Do you just Google it, or do you go to Facebook, or do you just kind of know like what's out in the world and then everything else you Google afterwards? Like, what's your if you didn't have me in the world, what would the process be?
I think generally like how I formulate my opinions is just through over time of like seeing different perspectives on social media, like whether it's Twitter or like people's Instagram stories or like Instagram or whatever. And then if there is like a specific issue that I feel really confused about, I really like watching like video content or like podcast content is really helpful for me, because sometimes just like reading stuff just I'm pretty sure I have ADD, so but like so I just really like watching like kind of like comedic political content that helps kind of just like punch up and like show the hypocrisy within like certain things. So I love like Hassan Minaj, and like he really has brought my awareness to a lot of different political issues. And also just like there are so many people that I just go to online of being like, this person has really good opinions. I'm just gonna kind of see what their tweets are saying.
And I think that's the answer at the end of the day. It's like, look, ballotready.org is really great. Legal Women Vote is really great, but also like your community is what's really great. So who do you trust in these issues? Who do you only turn to when you want to learn more of these issues? And I think it all comes down to trust. You know, I trust you to educate me on certain issues. So that's why I reach out to you when I don't know what's going on. You know, that's why you reach out to me. So, you know, your local friends, like the people you know who are involved in your community, they count as a resource. It doesn't all need to be a vetted online policy paper. And, you know, kind of what we brought up earlier is also going towards like local organizations that you support and know a lot about the issues you care about. Again, I don't know everything happening in reproductive justice. That's why I'm going to ask Planned Parenthood to do the research for me, because that's what they do best. And I think the last one that I want to bring up that I think everyone kind of forgets because they are dying, but local newspapers, like local journalism is what will save us all, because again, they know best what's happening at these local issues. Like no one's going to know better about what's going on in like local LA jails than LA Daily News and LA Times and like the Sentinel and all of these papers. And we've watched so many of them get defunded because, let's be honest, Ian, how many newspapers do you subscribe to?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's sad to see like a lot of these smaller papers are dying. And so give them that traffic, because like they know what's best. They go to all of the local town halls and they cover all of the candidates. I have friends who work for local papers. They work really hard. Please acknowledge how hard they work. But
that's so true. I didn't even think about how like the journalists are actually going to, you know, every single town meeting and like every single like politician press event, and like they're the ones that are collecting all the info for us. So
right, and so like those are like great places to go to. And so again, it's not like necessarily the biggest organization or the biggest like website to go to. Like there are all sorts of smaller like things that you can look at to get answers. But yeah. All right, and then we have one more. Ooh, you talk about how youth are more knowledgeable about politics and policy than the average American. Absolutely true. Do you think that political parties, candidates, and groups are doing a meaningful job outreaching to youth and young adults? I have worked for the campaigns, groups, and parties, so I'm gonna let you answer first to get your opinion, and then I'm gonna answer how I think I've been doing with my whole career. that question is a statement on what I've done with my life.
oh, okay. So no pressure.
No pressure at all.
I mean, this is something that from my perspective, I just haven't had the chance to get really super involved in like a political campaign of a politician yet, because there really hasn't been someone I've been like super passionate about and like following up with and like reaching out to. I have written like my senator a few times and heard back, but it's never been something that I was like, oh wow, like, you know, like it didn't really blow me away. What actually I did notice though is a few local like local level representatives of people where they were in like the House of Representatives or they were like a district member. I don't know the exact terms of like the local county level people.
That's what Ballot Ready is for. It'll tell you the names of everything.
Exactly. Yes. But yeah, the people that are like community, like local level, I noticed a few people were like reaching out to me on Twitter, like replying to my tweets or like DMing me, like just about like nothing related to their politics or their campaign. But then I would go on their account and be like, oh, they're running for Congress right now. Like that's, oh, okay. And like, so I really thought that was great that that they were willing to just kind of like reach out to people on social media, like specifically just like thanking me for like my trans representation in the media. And I felt really acknowledged by that. And I was like, oh, so I don't know. I thought that at least on the local level, I've seen a really good amount of like outreach on social media and just making sure that they like kind of stay on top of replying to their stuff. But I do recognize that like on a larger scale of like someone who's like state level or federal level, they generally have like whole teams of people running their social media. I haven't interacted with those people as much, so.
Can we pause again on this voting thing and also go back to you, that you're always shocked that people reach out to you and thank you for the badass work you're doing, even though it's badass work that deserves to be recognized. And if we were doing this event in person, people would be clapping for you. I would just like to remind you of that you do, again, like they care about you just as much as you care about them, like you're doing something that they're impressed with. But do I think political parties I was gonna follow up with something. Has a candidate or a volunteer ever knocked on your door, called you, or texted you?
Nope. Maybe they have tried to call me, but I just haven't answered because I have such bad phone anxiety. I just don't pick up like unknown numbers.
I don't pick up on, like, that's why I do text banking. Like every candidate has reached out to me and just been like, oh, can you volunteer by like doing phone banking? And I was like, I don't want to call anyone, and trust me, they don't want me to call them. Like, no, none of us want phone calls anymore. But you know, actually, I go back and forth on this. Like, do I think political parties and candidates and groups are doing a meaningful job? Yes and no. We're trying. I think I've tried. But also at the end of the day, I think the sucky thing is, I think they said, my number's probably wrong, but like 90% of all funds during the campaign cycle goes to partisan, get out the vote. And like, that's the thing is like, we're only caring about this. Like this campaign only exists until the November ballot. Like we're not slowly building and cultivating people. And that's what sucks is like, hey, we care about you until the election and then we're gonna go away. And I think that's what is important about doing like nonpartisan outreach like this, but also like getting involved with groups that you care about. So that's why I started this is like, what are the issues that you're really passionate about? Like you can go and get involved with them. And then they'll tell you like, these are the different bills and the different candidates that we're backing, because I think that's the harder thing is like young people need that guidance, and that guidance can't be 6 weeks leading up to the election. And so I think it's really hard to do outreach in a place that's just built like that is temporary. And I've worked so many campaigns. That's not because have such a badass career. It's really not. It's because every 3 months there's a new election somewhere somehow. So, you know, that's how I think. That's where I would go back to it is like, I think you should definitely get involved in campaigns. You should definitely get involved in your election, but I think you should also like find ways, like if there's something you really care about, to really get involved in those organizations. And I think that's what sometimes maybe the parties and organizations should look at is like, how do we build like long-term development? And there's some great orgs that do fellowships. There's some great orgs that do internships. There's some that do like long-standing volunteer activities. But that goes back to it is like, they should want us to be involved in the process just as much as they need from us. Like, because if it's just a take, it's vote for us, give us money, text bank for us, volunteer for us, it's like, they're not investing in what we want, and that's what we deserve to have to say. All right. How do you approach positions or candidates you don't know about on the ballot? Ooh. I'm gonna have to take this one, aren't I? Unless you
yeah, I was gonna say I have not voted yet. I think my process is just gonna be a combination of asking for guidance and also Googling things as I go down the ballot of being like, what's this issue? What's this issue? Who's this person?
Yeah. How do I approach positions on the ballot? I think one, look, I'm an issue voter. That's maybe not the best way to do it. So people have arguments about that, but like there are certain things I care about. I came into this work doing sexual violence advocacy. I came to doing like ed policy reform, and I came into it doing like mass incarceration reform after teaching in the prisons. Like, so I look at my candidates and I see like, do these positions have an effect on that? And like we said, like mass incarceration has things at the local, state, federal level. So what is this congressional, member doing about this? What is the city council member doing about this? And again, if they don't have an answer on their website, you get to ask them. And that's the thing is like, start doing your research. Like once the ballot comes out, which happens like a few weeks before voting starts, you can go out and reach out to these candidates and be like, hey, I'm not gonna vote for you. You don't have anything to say on this issue. And then you find out, do they match you? I remember I didn't know how to vote for judges. Why do we vote? Some people disagree with me, but like, how do we vote for judges and why do we vote for judges? But that's also a very complex thing. Like, I don't know the law. How can I judge whether or not someone else knows the law well? Like, that's the hardest position on earth. And that is where I reached out to somebody else and I was like, I don't know how to vote for a judge. You're a lawyer, tell me what to do. And he was like, you know what you can do? You can look at the Bar Association, because they actually do rate the judges based on how much they know the law. And they'll be like well qualified, extremely qualified, not qualified. Not qualified is an automatic decision to me. But, and it goes back to that is, you have the ability to ask people in your network. And I worked on campaigns and I worked in political parties and I work for an organization now. We spend a lot of money trying to reach people. We are begging you to reach out. We want you to be involved. We want you to give us attention. Please give us attention. We are trying. So you have the ability to also reach out and just be like, I don't know why I should vote for you. Like, tell me what I should be looking for in these candidates. Like, that is something that you get to do. And I think that's kind of how I've approached it, is like, what are the issues I care about and how does this position affect me or not affect me? And if it doesn't, sometimes also that's where like you can reach out to people who this does affect. So again, I know nothing, you know, I'm not trans, and I know I'm never gonna know that experience. I'm never gonna know what issues you face. I'm never gonna know like what your experience is like. But you're someone I care about, and I'm gonna vote for you. So what do you think about this? Like, what is something that you feel like Congress members aren't doing that I should be looking for? Like, that's how you can approach it, is like, who do you love? Who do you fight for? What are you fighting for? And what do you think these people can do around that? And you know what? They're running for you. A campaign at the end of the day is just the most intense job application process of all damn time. They owe you an answer to everything. Last question is, where did I get this hoodie? Oh, good God, I don't remember. Some girl designed it, and I will make sure to comment it on Project 2020 when I remember where I bought it from. But it's the greatest thing, and it says, "Okay, Boomer," and then it says, "Have a terrible day."
I love it so much. It's so aesthetically pleasing too.
Hey, you just gotta pop the white paint. Well, I don't know, hope people don't mind we end about 5 minutes early, unless Ian, is there anything else you wanted to add before I wrap it up?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just so glad to have had this talk with you, and I'm so glad to just like start implementing the things that you talked about. Like you said, just start voting for people that I care about, and for I realize that I don't have to know everything. I don't have to have all the answers. I can ask questions, I can make mistakes, and I feel a whole lot better about my first time voting for sure now after this.
So you're not going to be a soft boy, you're not going to be a fuck boy, you're not going to be a sad boy, you're going to be a vote boy. You got it, Ian? That's the new thing now. We're going to make that the new cool thing.
Here's to being some vote boys.
Yes, thank you.
I'll drink to that.
Oh, baby under 21-year-old who can't actually do toast. Oh, what?
Drinking water.
The first time you vote after you turn 21, I will pop out the champagne.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
Well, that wraps up this webinar. Thank you to the 2020 Project organizers, as well as our co-sponsor, HM News, for having us here today. You can also find us on, gosh, here we go. This is my terrible, terrible handwriting, but you can find more about us at vote-2020-project.org or the 2020 Project's social channels at Vote 2020 Project. And as a reminder, if your state allows online voter registration, you can head to our site, take the pledge, and register to vote. And if you can't register to vote by mail, and you can't register to vote by mail, go scream at your Secretary of State and make it so you can register to vote by mail. No one should be voting in person this year. And otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and have a good night, y'all.
Good night. Thanks for watching. Bye.